and welcome to this month's Side Alpha Leadership. I'm your host, David Polikoff. Have the pleasure of having Mike Nasti on with me. Mike's been on our show for fire engineering with RJ and Sam probably about 4 or 5 months ago. Mike's a firefighter in the Washington metropolitan area. Actually, he's an officer. So without me going any further, Mike, welcome to the show and tell everybody a little bit about yourself.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here and to be asked to be on with some of the guests that I've seen that you have. It's an honor to be here, and I truly feel like an underdog almost. And I say that in jest, but thanks for having me. I've worked in the DC metropolitan area for almost 18 years now. I'm a station level officer for almost 10 years as well. And I got into the fire service in 2001 as a volunteer in Southern Maryland. Been in it ever since. Married, got a kid. Everything's pretty good. I have my own podcast as well that I've been working through for the last couple of years. Just had a article come out with fire engineering in February with Frank Ritchie, and it's called Training for Aggressive Search. So, that's a little bit of me in a nutshell. I haven't picked up here's your current episode of Fire Engineering.
That's right.
The February Fire Engineering, in case you, wanted to find yourself reading something, it should be right on page 10, right there.
Yep. Now, a couple things to unpack there. Frank Ritchie, a good friend of mine. I've known Frank for a long, long time. Matter of fact, my first fire engineering article that I wrote, I co-wrote with Frank Ritchie. Was fortunate enough to add to his book that came out. And we're currently Frank, myself, and Dave McGlenn are working on a collaborative book together right now. So Frank Ritchie is a wealth of knowledge. Matter of fact, I have to credit Frank for the articles that we've written, and then the solo article that I wrote, and then also the current position that I have now in Frederick County. He basically through the internet, because he's up in Connecticut, we work together for interview. Most firefighters, when they interview for a job, it's a quick interview, but it's not the kind of interview that you sit down for in the civilian world. It's a really, the fire service has their own kind of interview. So this particular interview was more of tell me about yourself, tell us this, tell me something good, tell me something bad. I've never had to sit through an interview like that before, because I got hired when I was 18 and this is all I knew. So Frank says, well, send me a copy of what the job description is, and then I'll come up with some 9 questions. He said, give me a couple of weeks. So a couple of weeks go by, and we get up on Skype, and he's got 9 questions written out based on the job description and things that he thinks that they may ask. We went through all 9 questions, and he's taking notes. He goes, okay. He said, that was probably the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. If you know Frank Ritchie, he's very blunt. So I started laughing. And he says, but don't feel bad. He said, everybody feels that way because nobody's had to ever interview for a job when they're already in the fire department. So he guided me in the right direction. And with the 9 questions that he had come up with, 4 of them were almost verbatim in the interview. So Frank's a very smart guy. He's a very, very high level, high thinking, quick thinking kind of guy. So kudos to you that you got to get with Frank, and that kind of springboards you into the fire engineering world, where you're going to start writing a little bit more, start maybe presenting that, because he's probably going to start telling you to put in for present at FDIC. He's going to pressure you for that.
He did. And it's kind of interesting, because I definitely felt very, I don't want to say underqualified, but I did not feel ready to write an article. I've never really written anything before. And he gave me some really good advice. He's like, don't think of it as an article. Just, this is the topic. Just write about it what you would talk about if it was for work. And I'm like, well, that's a good point. I think about it like that. And he did pressure me for FDIC and a few other things. But I was doing our last promotional process. So that it was one or the other, and I couldn't do both. And I obviously, picked the promotional process.
Sure.
So I don't know, maybe I'll work on something and try and put it together for next year. I'm not sure. I'm not saying it's something that I can't do. I'm not saying that at all, but I've never thought of myself as a presenter or anything beyond just sharing my experience on my podcast. That's all I do. As far as, I guess, my motivation, because I'm just a normal dude. I just ride a fire truck every day. I want to go to fires. I screw up on calls. I don't know. And you could probably, I guess, speak to this a little bit or maybe get me back in line, but I don't feel like a presenter or someone qualified to teach the masses. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Not
it's funny. I felt the same way, and Bobby Holton pressured me. I met Bobby a long time ago before he was even involved in fire engineering. He was still working for Albuquerque, and we were buying nozzles in Montgomery County, and he was working with Vindicator, and he wanted to show me some of I guess he got wind that we were buying nozzles. Maybe I saw him at the Firehouse Expo or something when it was in Baltimore. And once he made editor, I hit him up. I said, "Hey man, congratulations! That's awesome. That's a great honor." And he says, "Cool. When you gonna write an article and put something in, come and present at FDIC?" And I felt the same way. I'm like, I don't know enough to, to present to on the national level. I don't know enough to write an article. I mean, who wants to hear from me? And I'll tell you, like they told me, now, everybody has something to contribute in the fire service, and as you progress through the ranks, as you become a lieutenant and a captain, battalion chief, and you move forward, you start to recognize that I can't do this alone. I have to rely on the people that are underneath of me that are there, that I'm leading, my lieutenants and my captains when I became a battalion chief. They're knowledgeable too, and they see things differently than I see when I'm, running command in the car. So what I learned as I progressed through the ranks, as I got older, taking classes, talking to other people, everybody has a voice. Even that rookie has a voice. Sitting at the kitchen table, which I've said 1,000 times, it's the great equalizer. Everybody has a voice. You sit at the kitchen table, and you just talk about stuff, and you recognize that some of the newest people in the fire service, they see things different than somebody that's seasoned. So everybody has a voice. You've got something to contribute. And the fact that you want to contribute to the fire service is important. We need to have people. You just can't have the same old people saying the same things over and over and over again.
Right.
You got to have that fresh perspective. And to any of the officers that are out there listening, or any of the chief officers, career or volunteer, don't stifle your people. Let them talk. Let them learn stuff. Let them make mistakes. And then you talk about them. That's like you had said, you mess up on fires. I mean, I still mess up on fire. I still mess up at command, say dumb things on the radio. I might get upset at somebody for, and then I got to think about, but that's all a learning experience. And you come back and go, you know what? I have to show humility, because when I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You admit that you're wrong, and then you move forward. And what that does is it lets other people say, hey, you know what? The chief makes mistakes and he admits it, and we can move forward. If I make a mistake, I can admit it and I can move forward too. Use it as a learning tool. So don't ever think that you don't have something to add, because you've got, your podcast, Tip of the Spear podcast, and we'll talk about that towards the end as well. You throw a lot of good information out there, but you rely on the guests, like I'm doing right now. I rely on the guests to give me their perspective on topics, because I could talk about a topic all day long, but it's just my perspective. A lot of people see things a little differently, and I might be like, you know what? I never thought about it that way. I never saw it that way, or that never happened to me, and put that in the old Rolodex, which is for you younger people, at your contact list in your iPhone.
We had that. Yeah, we had that when I first started. We had Rolodexes for
right.
But
yeah, so anybody listening to this, man, don't ever think you don't have something. If you are teaching, even on a small level on your duty crew, you are doing the fire service a great service by moving it forward. And don't let anybody ever bring you down because you don't have enough time there and you should shut up and listen. Granted, when you're young, you should listen twice as much as you talk, but you should also contribute to conversations, because you'd be surprised. You got somebody who might be an electrical engineer who's got 1 year in the fire service. The guy knows more about electricity than I do. I hate electricity. It'll kill you fast. So
that life experience too. Like I've realized, and I've seen this a few times with people that are newer in the department. They get hired when they're older. Like there's a couple guys I know that got hired in their 30s and 40s that are way more mature than guys in their 40s, their 40s and 50s, or,
right.
Vice versa. Like I think actually a better example would be guys that come into the department in their early 20s that were in the military, and they are leaps and bounds more mature, more experienced, more life experience than somebody that, and there's nothing wrong with this, that's only known the fire department and they've been in for 10 years, right? That guy's 5 years or 4 years or whatever it is in the military probably will run circles around you. And where I saw that a lot was somebody I know that was in the military in my academy class, where I'm over here huffing and puffing, dying during PT, trying to get through it. And he's just like, this is absolute. And I'm like intimidated by instructors and getting yelled at. And I've never done that before. Like, it was an academy that felt like a little bit of a gut check, but I don't know any better. You know what I mean? And him and I are close to the same age. And he's like, this isn't shit. He's like, he went through an actual boot camp where he went, he went to boot camp for however many weeks it was. And he went through something that was the real deal. And he looks at this as a joke, not in a bad way, but he's like, this ain't nothing. He's like, just take it one task at a time, do whatever it is they need you to do to their expectations, keep the heat off you, do your push-ups, do your runs, and just take it take it hour by hour. He's like, so, you're having a bad day today. What time's lunch? Lunch is at 12 and it's 10. Make it to lunch. All right. Final formation's at 3. Make it till 3. Then you get to go home and chill and get your mind right. Start the next day, clean slate. Who gives a shit about the day before? Make it the best day you can. And we're the same age. And I'm over here like, oh, man, I don't know if I can do this. Like, holy shit, this is a lot harder than I thought it was. It's 100 degrees outside. And it's all perspective and life experience. It really is. And I mean, him and I are still good friends. And he's as sharp as they come. And I think that's because of that life experience in the beginning. So, he walked into a firehouse as a rookie where guys who don't know who he is may have been like, what the hell do you know? You're a 1 year, you're a first year guy. But in the same sense, he's a veteran. You know what I mean? He's been deployed. He's in the military. He's probably a good asset. I would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I lean on those military guys, that come through the academy. If I see them in the hallway at Frederick or whatever, I'll hey, how's, they're all, standing attention, say, hey guys, as you work, hey, who are you? What's your name? What do you do? What did you do before this? And I see the guys in the military, and I ask them a lot of questions because one of the things that you said, they went through a boot camp, and I've taught recruit classes before. I was as one of the adjunct instructors in Montgomery County, and I know some of the lead instructors try to handle it as a boot class, and I talk to the guys that have come through the military, and it's like I had to do my best not to laugh because the fire department it's quasi-military, and it's our boot camp, but we're not in your face screaming and carrying on and all that stuff. It's there's a regiment to it, and like you said, you watch a lot of military podcasts. It's like you just got to break your day up in chunks, make it the next 10 minutes, make it the next 20 minutes or whatever. And a lot of these guys, they'll go right through, with no issues. But one of the things that I like to lean on them is one of the things that we talked about. One of the things that we talked about offline is what they learned as they progressed, even through the ranks. And I even asked me, did you hold rank? Oh yeah, I was non-commissioned. I was a sergeant or whatever. I was a corporal. But with that came training, and I've mentioned it on this podcast, numerous times. You and I talked about it offline. It's one of the things that we wanted to get into in the beginning. It was that whole, how are we failing our firefighters that want to transition into technicians? And I think as the technician role, you learn how to drive in station. You learn, the apparatus. The apparatus isn't what it was. And I was talking to somebody a couple of days ago. We had in Montgomery County, there were master firefighters, which is the same as technician, but I used to have these guys the old school masters that, back in the day where the fire engines were cables and wiring and stuff like that, hey, this light's not working. All right, we're going to rewire this so this light works. You can't do that anymore. Hey, right. The throttle's not working. We got to fix the cable linkage. You can't, everything's electronic now, but those old school masters could keep that fire engine running. Those old school masters were the ones that ran the floor for the lieutenants and the captains, making sure the day got, moved along, make sure housework got done, making sure that, people were doing the things they were supposed to do on the apparatus, making sure that it's clean, their SCBA is ready to go. Not having that officer have to just kind of stand out there and over top of his people. And the days of those old school masters, they're gone. A lot of them they drive the apparatus, but they didn't come with that leadership quality from a structured training school. And the military do, you go through corporal school and sergeant, and then when you get into the commissioned officers, we have a little bit of it in Frederick. We run our officers through. I know they have an officer school in Montgomery County. I know where you work. They have some officer school. But I just think, and I've said it 1,000 times, I really think we're missing the mark to really get these people spun up for the rank that they're in, and then the next rank, and then how to lead people, and how to get things done, how to talk to people, how to mitigate situations that are going to come up. And, you can't, we're firemen. We get ourselves in so much shit. It's ridiculous. But how to, get answers, almost be a detective. And we're getting there, but we're not there yet. How do we fix that? Or am I just seeing stuff through the lens of oldness?
No, I think it's just like anything else. The times, you have to adapt to the times, and society, people, and everything's going to change. And I think you have to figure out the best way to adapt to society and what society is giving the fire department now. So like the way people were at 20, 21, 22 years old when I got hired in 2007 are different than 21, 22-year-olds in 2025. Culturally, everything's different. I mean, just society as a whole, right? So I think where the fire department, they need to find a way to meet in the middle on a way to attract and find the correct candidates. And by correct, I mean qualified, guys that are devoted or committed, and guys and girls that want to be there beyond just benefits and pay. Right. So if you turn around and all you do is talk about you work a 24/72 or 24/48 with a Kelly, and you're going to make $65,000 to start, and you can retire as a maxed out fire 3 or master or whatever at $117,000 a year, and you get whatever your pension is, you're going to have people that are going to be chasing finances rather than the ones that want to be there because they want to go to fires. Those are going to be the people that you really want. Right. So the best example I have, or one of the better examples I have, I should say, I was never in the military, just to make that very clear, but there was a book that was written by Nate Fick. It's called One Bullet Away, right? And in the book, he talks about he goes to Dartmouth for college, and he is debating on the military, isn't sure what to do. So he starts going through all the different branches, and every single branch says what they'll pay for graduate school, they'll pay for this, they'll do all the things. And then the Marines asked you, do you have what it takes? And they offered absolutely nothing. Right. So they're going to attract the people that want that challenge, or the ones that want to be Marines, or the ones that want to go fight wars. They are very, very, very open about they're a war fighting branch. Right. Every Marine a rifleman. So the corollary to that would be any accountant or dentist is going to be a rifleman, and then any officer in any rank is going to be a rifle platoon commander first, then whatever their job is second, right? So when it comes into the fire service, the point that I'm making, and by all means, reel me back in here if I'm off in left field, you got to get the people that want to be there. So when you advertise, I would think, you do show your benefits, your pay, your schedule. You should show that, and then tell people why they should work for you. We go to this amount of fires. We have these kind of fire trucks. We have nice gear. We have a culture of training. We have a culture of aggression. We also, we do our job safe and correctly, but our job is going to be inherently dangerous, and you're going to get in some shitty spots, but we're going to train you up, and you're going to be incredibly aggressive on interior firefighting to give the citizens and visitors the best chance at having the best firefighters protecting them possible. That's the way it should be, I think.
Yeah, great.
I get the culture of safety, and I do think there is a way to do things safely, but when you have the gear that you buy that says on it, it's right on the sticker. Firefighting is an inherently dangerous job. It's it, right? So yes, whatever. But you should be trying to attract the people that want to be there beyond a paycheck, I think. And for anyone that's spending any amount of time into the fire department, they're going to know who's there for a paycheck and who's not. So when you have somebody that just starts out there for a paycheck, and then they go and hide in an office. Then they all of a sudden they pop out as a captain, and now they're a chief. They never spent time pumping hose. They've never spent time fighting fires. I mean, you know as well as I do, there's people out there that are officers that learned how to be firefighters when they were officers. That's shitty. That's, sometimes, and I guess I should clarify on that. There's some things that are out of your control, and I get that. You can't, know how many fires you're going to go to. Some places go to more fires than others. I'm not saying that at all. But you know as well as I do, there's people there that are only there for a paycheck, right?
Absolutely.
And when you have those people start floating around, moving around, and you don't have anything to stop them as far as standards, you don't have anything as far as, a pipeline from firefighter to fire chief. You don't have that pipeline. Every training standard, experience standard, education standard, time and grade standard, and then most of all, and I've said this before, if you have whatever fire department, you should be able to go somewhere and see a captain in the Montgomery County Fire Department, expectations, A through Z, education, A through Z, what the fire chief sees as what a captain should be, the way they carry themselves, how they do their daily routine. Like, you should be able to explain to me as a deputy chief or a fire chief, whatever, you should be able to explain to me what you expect of your captains, how they should carry, like I said before, how they should carry themselves and what you would want from them. And you should be able to do that at every level. So, and were you in the military? I don't know if I asked. Okay.
Nope.
Well, and maybe somebody can chime in or, a comment section or call me and tell me I'm an idiot. But throughout the military, when you go to corporal school, sergeant school, all these schools, they will explain to you a corporal in the Army is, and they explain it. So they're, without a shadow of a doubt, you know what a corporal should be, right? Or a specialist or whatever rank, whatever branch. Either way, all the non-commissioned officers in the ranks, as you move through it, when you get promoted, you go to a school. Is that always practical in the fire department? No. Is that practical now during all these staffing? I've never seen anything like this when it comes to staffing and hiring in the fire service. Like, when I took my test for where I work, it was at an arena and the entire floor was full of chairs, and good luck getting hired because it was so competitive. You had 4,000 and 5,000 people applying. Now, I don't even know if there's 400 or 500 people that are qualified at all when it comes to the process. So, I mean, that's the first thing is I've never seen things so short. You used to be able to, people are beating down the doors and you're on year-long waiting lists. Now it just feels like we can't get people to apply at all. And I lost my train of thought, but basically what I'm getting at is you don't have people beating down the door like they used to, but when you have people that slip through the cracks and they're not the right ones to be there, and then they turn around and they're the ones trying to lead, they don't develop things, they're in positions that they are way in over their heads, and they probably got in the position and didn't realize it until they got there. They're incredibly underqualified. And, I think those things happen more common when you don't have strict standards, a well-defined culture, a well-defined culture of education, pride, training, expectations, and accountability at all levels, at all ranks. I don't think there should be any reason why, people are just kind of motoring around doing nothing. And then if you want to promote somebody to, let's say, a lieutenant, and you give them a 2-week class on how to do a few admin things, and then it's like, all right, good luck. You're doing yourself a disservice because what do they know? They may or may not know. They may be good. They may not be good. But you could be in my opinion, you could be the best firefighter in the world. When you walk into the firehouse day one as a lieutenant, everything is different. Everything. But you're provided no training, no education, no in-depth education, no pipeline, nothing beyond whatever the absolute bare minimum is, but you're still held accountable as if you were trained and fully educated, because you could walk in day one and kill somebody from your lack of knowledge, from your lack of abilities. It doesn't matter. You walk in day one or you get swearing in, the responsibility is there, whether you're ready for it or not, and whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? And you have to do something to prepare yourself. So if you're not doing it yourself, and your department doesn't have something as far as a pipeline to hold you to, like, Here's your roadmap, go. And you don't have that, it's a complete disservice to your organization. And I think I really do. I was a little all over the place with that, and I apologize. But
No, not at all. And when you're working for as a career person, when you're working for an organization, you do need to know what the expectations is for each position. The organization itself has to prepare the firefighters to move up, in rank. They come through recruit school and they're given this recruit manual that they have to go, their probationary manual. They go out and for a year, they have to study out of that probationary manual, learning the fire service, learning your station, learning your first due area, hospitals, how to use the computers, all that stuff. And the sad thing is that recruit school and that first year of probation is the best training you're going to receive in the fire service. And it shouldn't be that way. It should be the beginning. And then, hey, you're going to sit for the promotional exam to be, the first line officer, if that's sergeant, lieutenant, or whatever, we'll say lieutenant. Okay, great. You need to study for the test. They're going to provide you with the promotional information that you need to study for so you can take the written test. If you score well enough, you move on to the assessment center. Once you pass all that and you make the list, whether it's qualified, well qualified, however they break the list down, every single person on that list will go to some type of officer candidate school. It has to be longer than a week. I would say it has to be at least 2 months of day work wise, 5 days a week, to be able to talk not only about incidents, and like you said, riding the back of a fire engine and riding the front of the fire engine are two different things. When you take on the responsibility as an officer, it's different than being the responsibility of being a firefighter. So you need to understand what that job entails on the incident side, on the tactical side. How are we, how do the policies that you're following as a firefighter, you're following the same policies, but what are the expectations from the officer when they follow those policies? So, that in itself can be a couple of weeks long, and we throw scenarios in there. I mean, you go take EMT refresher, a 24-hour EMT refresher, and the whole thing is scenarios, PowerPoints and hands-on scenarios. Why the hell is can we not have an officer school that has hands-on scenarios? We go out. You do whatever. We run you at the burn building, and we run incidents. We run car accidents. We run medical locals, whatever. And then you transition to, what about the administrative stuff? Are we still doing time cards? Are we approving time cards? All that administrative stuff, you need to learn how to do that. And then dealing with people, making decisions. You're a social worker, whether you like it or not. Once you become an officer, you're a social worker. You're there for your people. If they are struggling, you're there to help them, no matter what it is. And then you need to know how to get them the help if it goes beyond you. That's 2 months long. And it has to be. So when you come out, whether you get promoted or not, you've got that knowledge of leadership school. So if unfortunately they don't make enough promotions and you end up dying on the list and you're still a firefighter, you've got that extra knowledge. So when you go to take the test the next time through, you might do much better on the test and you're prepared. That it has to happen. And as we move forward, when you take the captain's test, there might be a little more involved. It might not have to be 2 months at that point. Maybe it's only a week. Maybe it's only 2 weeks. When you get on the captain's list, when you become a battalion chief, you're transitioning over from station management to management, to senior management. You're dealing more strategies as opposed to tactics. That in itself, it can be a month long. A lot of departments now, at least I can speak for the Mid-Atlantic area, we are, and Frederick included, we're doing the command comps for the chief officers, and we certify our chief officers. And the same thing in Montgomery County, that they will actually run somebody through practical scenarios using digital simulation and things like that, and they have to perform in front of a panel to make sure that they know how to run an incident. They know how to follow the policies. They know how to make decisions. They know how to track people on the tactical worksheets. And then every year you got to go through that training. It's a, I don't want to say it's a new concept. It's a fairly new concept. And I've said it 1,000 times. Hey, we want our firefighters to constantly go out and throw ladders, pull line, do search and rescue drills, put their gear on, put their SUV on. We want them to be proficient. What are you doing as a chief officer to keep your skills up? And a lot of times it's I'm not doing anything. So now, like in Frederick, we've got this command comp program that's going through. We're started testing it last year. Now it's going to be mandatory with, and with that is a component of training that you have to get 12 hours of continuing education training on top of going through the command comp scenarios. Montgomery's been doing it forever. I was fortunate enough to be able to sit on that. I don't want to call it a committee, but we the development process as well as the evaluation process. So we in the public, as well as in the fire department, we want our people to continually train. Like you said in the beginning, when 911's called, the best trained people are rolling up into the front of that building to help people potentially on the worst day of their life figure out what their situation is and fix it. That's what we're supposed to do. So in order to do that, we got to constantly train. Because the fire service is always evolving. There's always new things that are happening. There's always new science that we're learning. So in order to be able to be the best that we can be, not trying to sound like an Army commercial, we have to continue to train. And a lot of the things that you said, 100% correct. We used to see a few thousand people apply for the job. Now we're lucky if we get 400 people apply for the job. And then going through as you whittle down, whether, do they pass the background check? Do they pass the psych evaluation? Do they pass the medical? Do they pass the interview? You go and we want to get a class of 50, and you're lucky if we've got 110 people left over. And it's tough. It should be tough, but we should have more applicants. And if we're upfront about, yes, it is a great job. Yes, we do get good benefits. The pay is pretty good. You're not going to make $1 million doing this job, but the job is very dangerous. And I want to be able to look at people like the Marines do and go, you're not cut out for this. We only want the best. And I'm looking at you and I don't think that's the best. That's a challenge. And we want those type A personalities. Like, well, Hoss, you don't know who I am. This is where I want to be. I want to do this. You don't want to take the few, the proud. I want to be one of those few. You know what I mean? And that's the fire service. You can't, not everybody can be in the fire department. Career volunteer. We want the best. And it's okay if you don't have experience. We'll train you.
Yeah, and the other thing too is you also have to be attractive in their eyes as well. Like if you're a fire department in dysfunction and you're in a tailspin and your organization is just screwed up from top to bottom and it's nothing but problems, like why would somebody want to come work for you too? And to take what you said a little bit further, you're talking about numbers and maybe 150 people left over and you get a class of recruit of 50. Think about it, and I'm not saying anyone in particular, any department in particular, but think about, and we're jumping on your experience. You get 50 in recruit school that come out, but how many of them are actually squared away or going to be squared away, right? I'm sure there's great employees, but we know as well as you know as well as I do, there's ones that are not great. They come out and they just suck.
Not everybody is equal, They're
not. And yeah, exactly. And I think what we try to teach them in recruit school is for them to have the desire to get better, understand what the team aspect is, and the unselfishness of camaraderie in a crew and unselfishness of service to the citizens. You have to teach that to them, and that has to be ingrained. But people, and this isn't towards anyone in particular, you can't cry about culture if you don't teach it in general.
Right. We just had this conversation in a leadership class that I'm in for Frederick County, and we talked about culture, and it's funny. The lady, she was the superintendent of public schools for Frederick County, and she was talking about culture, and she mentioned the word culture. She says, "When I say culture, what do you guys think of?" And 4 or 5 people made a comment. Out of the 4 or 5 people, 3 of them was negative. It was negative. When you talk about culture, people think negative, and she discussed that a little bit. And I raised my hand and I said, when you actually, there's a guy in there who's in the military and he was talking before me. And of course, all the things that I was going to say, he's hitting because, he's in the military. And, I said, well, to tack on what he said, I said, the moment she mentioned culture, it was an automatic negative connotation in your head, and it shouldn't be. And I said, and what I would challenge is the fact that you think your culture is negative means that your organization, your leadership is unable to define what the culture is in your business. And if they can't do that, then yeah, it's going to be screwed up. So the fire service has a rich culture. And one of the things that irritates me is like, we need to change the culture of the fire service. And I always challenge people that say that. I said, tell me what needs to be changed. What needs to be changed in the fire service? And you'll see them struggle. It's like, these are sound bites that I've heard, and I've got to say that there's always room for change in the fire service, but the culture of fire service should be aggressive interior firefighting, because that's what the citizens want. It's a risk averse position. You're always going to be, you cannot take the risk out of the job unless we don't respond on the calls at all. Okay. And we assess what the risks are, and we will mitigate to the point that we can without us dying, to be blunt. So, as officers, we can look and see that a barn is fully involved and it's falling down. I'm not going to put people inside of that barn because they're going to get hurt, and the reward far is lower than the risk. So we are always going to be, and we need to be, an aggressive interior fire department. We roll up on the scene. We have smoke showing. They called for a house fire. The house is on fire. We are trained to go in and mitigate the emergency. And with that comes the training that we have to operate as safe as we can. Cannot make this job not be safe. It's going to be dangerous, because it is dangerous. But that's the culture of the fire service. You came on the job to help the citizens. And sometimes we have to go in and we have to help the citizens when their house is on fire, when there's a hazmat spill, when they're in cardiac arrest, when somebody's been shot. All the situations that we go into are dangerous, and that is what we signed up for. And if anybody is in the system saying like, well, this is a little too dangerous, I'm not going to do that, I'm not going to do that, you're in the wrong business. So when you come to the culture of the fire service, the culture of the fire service is that we're there to help the public, plain and simple. We're there for each other. We're there for the public. We're aggressive interior firefighting. We mitigate emergencies. Any emergency that's thrown at us, we have to figure out a way to fix it. Sometimes that entails being in risky situations. Sometimes we're in a defensive situation. It's up to the officer to be able to kind of do that size up. But the culture of the fire service, it does change. We don't use horses anymore. We don't use gasoline fire engines anymore. Those things change, but the root of the fire service has always been and always will be mitigating emergencies, helping the public. Maybe I look at it too simplistically, but I think that's where we are. And when I hear people say we need to change the culture of the fire service, like, what do you want to change? What is it that you want to change? Don't get political on me. Look at the fire service. What is it that you want to change? Because as far as I'm concerned, everybody gets a fair shot to get this job, regardless of your race, your nationality, your sex, your religion, whatever. Everybody gets a fair shot at this job. And depending upon how you do in your tests, how you do in your interview, how you do in recruit school will determine whether or not you come in, be able to be in this job. We have to set standards, whether it be the CPAT test, whether it be how your recruit school set up. You got to pass, and you got to put into the work. And you put in the work, you got a seat at the table. And I've said this, on one of my other podcasts. And I'm not trying to just make the fire service simple. I'm just trying to say that we only want the best. We work in a risky environment. We work in an environment that's not always safe. We do our best to make it safe. But the culture of the fire service is we are here to help the public. We are here to mitigate emergencies. We are here. It's dangerous. Sometimes we risk our lives for a favorable outcome. And like I said, maybe I'm just, looking at it way too simplistically, but I've always approached it that way. And that's my belief.
I think you're pretty spot on. I think there's also a culture of standards. You need to meet the standard, whatever that standard may be. Your standard is aggressive interior attack. Your standard is selflessness. It's a culture of service, right? This should be a culture of pride. You need to take pride in your skills and your abilities, pride in your company, pride in the fact that you're a lieutenant and these are your standards and no one's going to fall below it. I'm going to teach you and I'm going to hold you accountable when you don't meet it. Culture of tradition. We have a tradition of aggressive firefighting. We have a tradition of open-minded, intelligent firefighters. We have a tradition of, the senior firefighter. You mentioned a technician earlier. That's typically the buffer between the officers and the firefighters, right? Should be the senior guy on your shift should be the buffer between the officer and the guys. That's the way it should be. And then in the book that I told you about earlier, One Bullet Away, they were doing an attack and on the insurgents. And one of the things they said was, we've kicked the hornet's nest. We better start damn well killing some hornets. Well, this is a similar thing. If you want to have a culture of aggressive firefighting, you better start damn well put out some fires. You better start training people to be aggressive, efficient, effective, train people to have the tradition, have your pride, maintain your standards, and hold them accountable when they don't. That's the way it should be, I think. And I don't know if I'm off in left field, and please, by all means, correct me if I'm wrong. But, when you don't have standards, your performance is going to fall. If you don't have pride, no one's going to care about your standards. And if you don't have a tradition of whatever your traditions are, if you don't have the tradition of a well-established aggressive firefighting department, I think it all falls apart. I really do. And ultimately what I've seen and not with my own eyes, but what I've learned through my time in doing this podcast thing and talking to different people, talking to some absolute studs of firefighters, studs of officers. One thing that I've seen and learned is, if you have somebody that has no idea what they're doing, they slip through the cracks, now they're teaching somebody else. It's the blind leading the blind. You don't want that. You need your aggressive firefighters. You need your experienced guys in the field. And if you don't know what you're teaching, you don't know what you're doing, what do you think is going to come up with the next generation? Then eventually, at some point, you're going to have a group of people under the lesson plan of a guy that has no idea what he's doing, and now they're out teaching everybody else, and it just turns into a domino effect, I guess is the best explanation or best example for it, but I don't know, man. I think when people try to make too much of something out of nothing, and by that I mean there's so many rabbit holes you can go down when it comes to things in the fire department, but if you pride and circle yourself around the bare basic of being an aggressive firefighter, good, yes, this is a good EMT, because people hate EMS, but whatever, if it's part of your department, be good at it. And just start there. A pot of water boils from the bottom, right? So the fire department in its most organic level is a firefighter pulling a hand line, putting out a fire, and a firefighter riding an ambulance, driving someone to the hospital. If you get those things right, and you get really good at them, and while you're doing that, you're being selfless for those around you, and you put the good of the crew ahead of the good of yourself, and then the crew puts the good of the citizens ahead of themselves. I think in time, as you move forward with that, and you have well-trained firefighters, well-experienced firefighters, those guys start moving up to become officers, captains, chiefs, and so on. I think that's when you develop that culture that you're talking about, right? You have a shitload of pride in what you're doing because you work at Station 1. Station 1 standards are X, Y, and Z. You didn't meet our standards. You're going to pay for it. You're going to be held accountable. This is your accountability or whatever, punishment, okay? It's not hazing, punishment. And then there is a little bit of hazing. You have to prove that you want to be there. You have to prove you're there for the right reasons. And you have to prove that you can take the pressure in the firehouse when you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, or you're not up to standard. Because when you go out on calls, It's game time, right? So you have to be able to put out in the firehouse level and be uncomfortable. But when you take all of that and everything's just rooted in pride and tradition and knowledge. I don't know, man. I think that would solve a lot. I mean, I'm not saying I can solve the world's problems. I'm not saying that at all. But I think when people start getting lost in the sauce and try to make things too big of a deal or try to make things more complicated than they need to be, like you said, your simplistic approach, when you try to make things much more than they need to be, that's when it starts getting difficult. And this isn't a knock on chiefs at all. I'm not saying it is. But, you know, in the station level, when you have chief officers that are, you know, checkbox chiefs and they're just reading down a list and checking boxes, it's much different than that chief that has been a captain. So he knows what they do. He knows what a firefighter does because he's been a firefighter. He's ridden a ladder truck. He's ridden an engine. He's ridden a rescue squad. He knows what everyone's job at every level. And then he can let those guys just do their jobs and then check in on, but and I guess the best way I keep hearing people say is that guy could talk a fire out. I mean, if you think about it, told you it's on fire. Your department operating procedures probably tell you every unit where to go and where to be. And if you go and direct your units, you should be doing that as a chief, I think. You hold accountability, check in on them, adapt as needed. But ultimately, I think the good ones know what those guys are going to be doing, what they should be doing, and a pretty decent time frame of their task being accomplished. And then when you start walking that down, now you're at a captain level. You know that of the lieutenants and the firefighters and the other units on the fire ground in the firehouse. Walk that down a level to being a lieutenant. And then it goes right back down. So you have it from the pot of water, from the bottom going up, then from the top back down. And, time and time again, I've heard comments of people thinking as you start going that ladder of leadership, being an officer, low management, middle management, upper management, the farther you go, the further disconnected people get. And there's a difference in my accountability has changed. Like I'm a captain now. There's things that I can't get away with. I can't do, I can't say, and I have an accountability level. But at the end of the day, again, like I said before, when it comes to aggressive firefighting, aggressively caring about your guys and aggressively doing the right thing as a leader and as a firefighter and as just a fellow dude on the crew, if you do the right thing and you're selfless in your actions and you do things for the good of the many, not for yourself, a lot of shit figures itself out. It really does. Like we talked about before, one day at a time, one situation at a time, one call at a time. If you do things beyond that and you start getting into those super deep levels of just absurdity, that's when you start getting lost in the sauce. Or if you just hide in an office for years and you don't know what it's like to go out and get your ass kicked in the field on a bunch of calls, and all you want to do is get back and eat some food. You just want to hang around with the guys and shoot the shit, not get talked down to by management and told what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong, yet nobody seems to know what your job is because they've never really done it because they've been in an office the whole time. You know what I mean? Like, you don't want that. You want to be able to understand the difference and know what it's like to be in their shoes, because I feel like that's going to lead you to the best decisions you can make. Ultimately, it just comes down to the well-being of the firefighter at any rank. Because like I said before, at the most organic level is going to be that firefighter pulling the line, putting the fire out, right? Everything and everyone else, including every station officer and every battalion chief captain, everything, it's all pure support of that fire truck showing up, putting out the fire, the ambulance showing up, taking somebody to the hospital. Everything is just pure support of that action. Even on the fire ground, fire goes as the first line goes. Everything else is pure support. That's it.
Agree, 100%. And one of the things I want to make sure that the people understand that are listening to this, when I say the word aggressive, that's not a bad word. Being aggressive at your job is not a bad word. That just means that you're doing your job, you're hard hitting, you're following through, making sure that the job is getting done correctly. A lot of people view aggressiveness as recklessness, and it's not. You can be reckless, but it's not. And one of the other things is to quote RJ and Sam, we talked about this at the fire engineering podcast. It's okay to love your job. It's okay to have pride. It's okay. I tell you right now, they tap out a box alarm in Frederick, even though I'm not on duty. I'm listening. I want to hear what's going on. It's okay. Sam's a big buff. He likes to go to fires and watch and videotape and all that stuff. It is okay to love your job and understand that not everybody's going to be as passionate as you are, and that's okay too. As long as when they are at work, they're 100%. They're on 100%. It's okay. And then one of the last things that you said, and I just had this conversation with one of our newer volunteers at my volunteer house. You got to develop thick skin. You got to be able, when you say hazing, people need to understand, we're not talking hazing like criminal stuff. We're talking about just goofing with you, busting your balls and whatnot. And
let me jump in real quick with
yeah.
hazing thing. So, hazing became a bad word when people did things that are over the top, right? And there's a very interesting conversation I had with somebody, and the hazing thing kind of came up, but they got really upset about being told as a rookie they have to make coffee. They're like, well, I don't make coffee, I don't drink it. I'm not making coffee for grown men that can make it themselves. But it's not about the coffee. I'm the officer, and I'm telling you, make sure there's a hot pot of coffee in the morning and the afternoon when it's really cold out. If nothing else, drop a pot when you get in. And if it looks like it's getting low, drop it again or turn it off, pour it out, and it's done for the night. Why don't drink coffee? Well, it's not about the coffee. I told you to do something. I said, hey, here's my expectations. Do this task. And I don't come back and I don't check on you. I told you to do it and I walked away, right? I gave you an expectation, a standard, and I want you to do it. And he's like, well, what does that have to do with working in the fire department? I said, well, there's no stress. There's no danger. I mean, I guess you could burn yourself. That could be, you could slip on the water I don't know. I say that in jest. There's no pressure. Nobody's life's at stake. There's no, negative impact on the citizens. There's no impact in your community. And there's really probably not going to be any impact on yourself, right? You're probably going to be okay getting through this. And he's like, well, yeah. And I'm like, well, now how am I supposed to trust you to throw 35 by yourself to the third floor, then enter search through that window, find somebody, call it in on the radio, shut the door, find the person, call it on the radio that you have a victim and you need to come out the rear. You're going to be able to tell me exactly where you are, what window you're coming out of, what ladder you threw, and exactly what you need. And I'm not going to be anywhere near you to talk to you. Meanwhile, there's 100 other things going on. Oh, and there's stress of wearing your gear, whatever you have going on in your life. 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 3 feet of snow, no snow, 120 degrees or 100 degrees outside with heat index, sleet, rain, I don't know. And you want me to trust you with all of that, but you want me to make a cup of coffee that requires no effort besides pouring water? That's the lesson that we're trying to teach you is you need to be able, when I tell you to do something that's not illegal, as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or unsafe, if I tell you to do something, you do it. Whether you like it or not, you do it right the first time, the way you're asked or you're told, and you're done. Because that starts building trust. It builds rapport. You're not going to make coffee forever. We're not going to be disrespectful and rude to you about it. It's just, hey, dude, make a cup of coffee. Hey, lead this drill today. Hey, it's snowing tonight. Throw out rock salt on the back driveway or on the sidewalk for when the guys come in. You know what I mean? Small, minor tasks that have absolutely very little effect, very little stress. You can't do them. But now I have to expect you with things that can endanger your life, my life, the citizen's life. Something you do or don't do can kill me, and there's nothing I can do to change that or somebody else. You know what I mean? And I don't want to say it is hazing, but it is hazing. It's a little bit of, maybe it's just turning up the pressure. Closing the vice is probably a better way to say it than hazing, because I think there's some overly sensitive people that take the word hazing and take certain tasks as hazing when they're really not. You have to prove yourself. You have.
And you have to prove yourself, every day. But getting back to what I was talking about, and you're exactly right. You have to be able to develop some thick skin. And I was talking to one of our newer firefighters, and we just had a fire, and it took her a little longer to get her gear on. She's a great firefighter. So I was giving her shit. I said, well, look, if you're too afraid to go in, this is after the fire. I said, then, you just ride the ambulance and you don't have to go in at all. And she just kind of taken it, and the other guys were kind of standing around, and they were kind of egging her on. He goes, well, he's the chief. And I said, let me give you a very important lesson here. I said, you need to develop thick skin. I said, the same goes for me. I said, if I'm busting your proverbial balls, and if you say something back to me with respect to bust my balls and I can't take it, that's on me. I said, I have to have thick skin too. I said, so from here on out, if I'm giving you a bunch of grief, you're more than welcome to give it back. And to anybody else in this firehouse, I said, that's what it's all about. But you need to develop that thick skin because, like you said earlier, you're going to run that call. And that person might be nasty to you. That person might, call you names. That person might be under the influence and say something that truly offensive. You got to laugh it off. And I said, that's how you develop that thick skin. I said, so if I'm just messing with you, saying, oh, you don't want to go into a fire, obviously you're dragging your feet or whatever, the answer might be like, oh, dude, Chief, with all due respect, Chief, go fuck yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how you build that rapport in the fire service. That's how you get that thick skin. We deal with things that way.
You're building a culture that way too, like a culture of accountability, but a culture of humor. Or not humor, but a culture of, you can tell that, if I'm busting your chops, it's all right. Like, I saw you sucked at what that was, you kind of sucked at what that was. And when we both kind of laugh and joke because you kind of sucked at what it was, we both know that that's not our standard. And you've probably proven yourself for the most part. We both kind of know it was kind of a one-off thing. But we both know you're going to tighten that up next time, and this isn't going to be a regular occurrence. And we can kind of joke around about it now because we know your ability and your standards and your level is usually up here. Today you didn't do it, and we're going to bust your chops about it. There's a little bit of that as well. And, like you said, yeah, you're the chief and everything, but, if you come down and you start,
you got to be able to take it.
You entered the arena, and
that's right.
It is a target-rich environment. I mean, I'm sure you've been at some of the tables I have, or not tables, but some of the same type of people and personalities as I have. And, you open yourself up for it, you better damn well take it because it's a target-rich environment is what I meant to say. And they're going to absolutely hammer you.
Yep. You have to be able to laugh. If you're going to dish it out, you have to be able to take it. And we've all known people like that. But, I think that, over there, to sum it up, because we're coming up on the 1 hour mark,
Sure.
We as firefighters, we constantly need to train because the job's always changing. We need to be able to define what the culture is. And, that whole lame bullshit, oh, we need to change the culture, to me is just crap. We're always changing things here and there. But to change the culture of something, to quote my buddy that's in the military, in order to change the culture, that's a 5 to 10 year process. A lot of us don't have that kind of time, but you change little things along the way as you evolve, as you learn. But in my opinion, the culture of the fire service is we are here to help the public, whether that means aggressive interior fire attack, aggressive emergency medical delivery, whether it be BLS or ALS, and to be able to make sure that we are constantly training so we can operate as safe as we can on the fire ground. And as we move through the ranks, we need to be responsible to make sure that we are preparing the next generation to be fire twos, fire threes, master firefighters or technicians, lieutenants, captains, battalion chiefs. Once you enter that particular level, then it's more of that, a lot of on the job training. But we, as the senior people in the fire service, need to make sure that the people that are coming up behind us have the tools that they need. And some of that is structured training that comes at the training academy level, developing a program and delivering that. And that only makes the fire service a little bit better.
Yeah, and change starts on the inside. It starts with you. You know what I mean? So you can't, and I'm not saying you can't be a chief somewhere and bitch and complain about the culture of your department, but you're doing nothing to fix it. You're not doing anything to personify it. You're not setting the example. You're not showing what you want out of your people. So, if you're a company level officer, it's all going to start with you. The individual firefighter starts with you. It all starts with your attitude. And I tell my kid this all the time. And at 40 years old, I often miss this mark, is you can't control what other people, you can't control what happens to you. You can always control how you react. And by that, I mean, are you in a shitty culture? Okay, well, what can you do to change it? Well, I can start myself. I can try to have a good attitude. I can take it one day at a time. And, I could sit in this conversation, whine and bitch and listen to it, or I could get up and leave and go read something or go do something to make myself better for that day. Be 1% better or whatever. I forget. O2X says that. And I forget what their slogan is. I think it's 1% better every day. Either way, do something to make yourself better if you're in if that's the case. You know what I mean? So, people often talk about the fire service is dead, the brotherhood is dead, this is dead, that's dead. No, it's not. The fire department's still the best freaking job in the world. It's awesome. Fires are fantastic. A shitty day at work is probably way better than working in an office job somewhere. It's better than digging a trench somewhere for pipe. It's better than harvesting crops somewhere. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Where can you go when you can hang out with some dudes that have the same, hopefully, ideology of you? You work shift work. You go to fires. You ride a cool fire truck. You put on uniforms are cool. You know what I mean? Like you get to have something you can take pride in, like your appearance, your pride, and make money, and then work overtime, and make more money. Like, you know what I mean? And you get to go to fires. That's the cool part. You know what I mean? So a crappy day there is much better than on any day in a lot of other professions in the world. And it's all first world problems, really, in my opinion. But back to the, you can't control what happens. So you can only control what, how you react to it. You can decide to be miserable, or you can decide to ignore it. You can decide to move on, or you can decide to dwell on it. You know what I mean? What I've always learned is the ones that complain the most do the the least about fixing whatever they're complaining about. They can tell you absolutely everything you've ever done wrong and every mistake you make and how stupid you are, but they've never tried to be an officer. They've never tried to be a technician, move up, or do anything that affects change in what they're complaining about. You know what I mean? Yep. So it all starts with you. And you know what? If nothing else, do you change the fire department? No, probably not. But if every individual is doing the best they can to make themselves the best they can be, and then by being the best they can be, they're being better for each other in a selfless way, that's going to change something somewhere. And if nothing else, the individual, if you're a better human being, that's a win too. I mean, not to be all like off in left field, emotional, like, in your feelings and shit. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to always do your best to be the best version of yourself at the job and off the job, for your family and for yourself. All the other shit's trivial, dude. It really is. It really is. That's my big thing.
Yep. We'll end it there. But before we go, tell people where they can find you. Talk a little bit about your podcast and where they can find you and listen and all that stuff.
Sure. You just search Tip of the Spirit Leadership Podcast. It'll pop up on Instagram, Twitter. I think I'm still using Twitter. Yeah. And then any podcast that you have, Spotify, Apple, are the big ones. But it should be on any podcast platform. And Instagram is probably the biggest. I do everything through Instagram, and everything disseminates to Twitter, It's on Facebook as well. But yeah, I mean, that's the best way to find me. And if you want to get a hold of me, Instagram's the absolute best. The podcast, it's just a simple things through my eyes, thoughts, lessons, shit that just pops in my head. I'll throw it on there with video, with some music or something, and just lessons that I've learned. None of it's proprietary. I mean, it's not anything I don't think other people know or have or experienced. It's just a dude riding a fire truck that I screw up, and I enjoy documenting my journey now. I enjoy it. And I enjoy talking to people about just fireman stuff and, loving the job. And, if it helps people, great. If I can affect one person's life or career or for the better in some way, awesome. I don't get anything out of this. None of this pays me. I don't make money off of any of this stuff. But it's very rewarding that my inbox has hundreds of messages. You know, there's there's a lot of good comments. There's some very interesting comments that come through. I'm sure you probably get the same on yours, and a lot of people that continuously report my posts, which is funny, comical, but the good with the bad. But overall, it's been very well received, and I guess what I didn't realize was how relatable my posts are to other people. And I guess the biggest point that I'm trying to make with saying all of this is I just started a podcast because something I wanted to try, and I enjoyed doing my page. And there's people that talk about what they get out of it. They learn a lot. They love it. Exactly what you said, some of the stuff that you've enjoyed, what I've put out. And it's had a good effect on the fire department. So if I can do that, anybody can do it, is the point that I'm making, right? And the biggest thing, most of all, just be yourself. And what I've learned through my podcast and my page is by just pushing out what I think. And it's been very well received. And there's a few guys out there, and they know who they are, have reached out to me about, not life-changing, but like for the good. They've come to me for advice for problems at work and outside of work. And I just gave my honest opinion, and I hear back they have really good things going on, or I'm about to promote, and, your stuff's really helped me. So it's just my outlet. Again, like I said, I don't get anything out of it beyond the gratification of knowing, there was a point in my career, in my life, where I had no idea what to do and how to be an officer and how to do any of this stuff. And looking back 10 years later, I have experience and knowledge, and I wish I knew then what I know now. And if I can help people that were in my shoes as a firefighter or as an officer, it's awesome, man. And I hear a lot of really good things back, and, it's a lot of fun. It really is. And, maybe one day my kid could listen to it, read it. He wants to be in the fire department. He's obsessed with it in a good way. And, that's just kind of me in a nutshell. So reach out. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody and everyone. I don't care. It doesn't have to be on the podcast setting. You can just hit me up on the messages. And if I'm delayed, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. Because like I said, I have a ton of them, and I do my best to answer all of them. And I do my best to answer all the reviews and responses I get from the podcast, both good and bad. There's a lot of people, or a lot of interesting messages and responses on some of the comments that people leave. So I'll just leave it at that.
Cool. Well, Mike, I appreciate you taking the time out of your weekend to be on the show. And yeah, man. So again, congrats with the success of your show. Like I said, thanks for being on mine, and good luck. Stay safe. Be aggressive. Bust some balls, and I'm sure we will see you, or I will see you in our circles. If not, definitely on Instagram.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Take it easy.
You too.